Welcome to the Blue Duck Fantasy Football Podcast.
Welcome to the Blue Duck Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ben. With me, I guess I can say as always, since you've been here for every single one, the man we call Matty Nice around here. Matt, how's your day?
Pretty good so far. How about yourself?
No complaints. What are we going to be talking about today?
Today we are going to be doing a team preview on the AFC South, and today we are also going to be doing the NFC South.
All right, well, let's just jump right in. Houston up first, and their quarterback, Deshaun Watson. What's the ADP on Deshaun Watson?
Deshaun Watson is, as likely you'd expect, sitting at quarterback number 2, being taken at pick 44. I have him actually as quarterback number 3 in my 6-point touchdown rankings, but number 2 in my 4-point touchdown rankings.
Yeah, and as you know, he is one of my avoids for this year. I love the talent. I think he's a great quarterback, but you're getting a lot of risk when you draft this guy. I have him ranked as my quarterback number 5, simply because of that risk. He's currently going at around, you said 40 ADP?
44, yeah.
40th, 45 overall. So you're looking at a pick in the 4th round on a quarterback who could easily get injured because of his running style. He's a dual threat quarterback. He'll use his legs, he'll use his arm, and he takes some big hits. So if you're using a pick there, you could be getting a quality player. And yeah, sure, everybody can get injured. But the point differential that Deshaun Watson's going to give you versus a quarterback that you draft in the 10th round compared to a wide receiver or running back that you draft at this spot and a wide receiver running back that you draft in the 10th round is going to be immense. So it's one of my avoids. Love the talent. Not a guy that I'm looking at getting in too many leagues.
Yeah, just quickly here, it's echoing what you said about just waiting on quarterbacks this year. We've talked about that every podcast we've done. Again, it's not really worth taking him over somebody you're going to get later.
As I said, I probably won't be getting Watson. I definitely won't be getting Lamar Miller out for the season. In the backup now, Duke Johnson recently traded over from Cleveland. Do you think they're going to be getting anybody else in that backfield, or do you think it's all Dukes?
From what I've been hearing, it's all Dukes. I mean, maybe they trade for somebody, but nobody's really giving up anybody that's going to supersede Duke, I don't think. They might bring in JJ, possibly.
I also heard a rumor that Carlos Hyde might be cut and just end up on the Houston roster as more of a depth running back. What is the ADP on Duke Johnson? I'm assuming that it hasn't caught up to where it's actually going to be when you draft, but what is his ADP currently?
Yeah, I don't think the market is quite caught up, like you said, but right now he's being drafted around running back 35 in both formats here, low 80s for the actual ADP here. I think that's going to change a little bit. He'll be probably moving into the late 20s is where I'd expect him to be for running back wise.
I'm just checking my rankings here on BlueDuckFantasy.com, and I see that we all have him around the same spot. I have him at 32 in standard. You have him at 28, and Mr. Black also has him at 28. Just going to check the PPR rankings really quick. But as you said, he's going at about 30th spot, so around where we have him ranked. If he gets the full workload, which, I mean, I think he can do it, but we haven't seen it, so it's always tough to see something like that. Obviously, more value in PPR regardless. Mm-hmm. He's a great pass-catching back. We all have him ranked around the same spot, around 25 in PPR. So about 25 in PPR, 30 in standard. Is that about where he's going, or is he going lower, he said, in PPR?
He's going just a past 30 in PPR, between 30 and 35.
Yeah, so it looks like some decent value in PPR at the moment, and standard looks to be about right.
It's probably going to be adjusted, though, next week.
As more people draft and more people take Duke Johnson, his value will go up. But, we see him as about a top 25 running back in PPR and around top 30 in standard. And, of course, all of our rankings are available at BlueDuckFantasy.com. We got PPR and standard rankings for all positions, and 4-point and 6-point passing touchdowns for quarterbacks. But let's move on to wide receivers, and a guy who's pretty good. He's my number 1 wide receiver this year, DeAndre Hopkins. What's his ADP?
He is, of course, again, what you'd expect, being drafted as the first receiver off the board, around pick 5 overall. Surprisingly, he's going a pick later in PPR. In PPR, you'd actually expect him to be higher, but That's what he is here. He's going after the top running backs. There's not a lot to say about D-Hop. He's the top receiver for me as well.
Yeah, not much to say about DeAndre Hopkins. I'm sure his ADP's moved up a bit with the holdouts to Gordon and Zeke, as I'm sure they were both clearly going ahead of him until they did that. But there's a couple other guys here that are interesting. One is Will Fuller, and one is Kiki Kuti. On my sleepers, I have Kiki Kuti, and on my bust candidates, I have Will Fuller. 3 years worth of Will Fuller. He's been injured every year. He's an injury risk, and he does have a high ceiling, especially in standard. But he's a guy that I'm looking at being just a bust again, especially with Kiki being there, who is also an injury risk, but only one season's worth. And Kiki better in PPR, Will Fuller better in standard. What are the ADPs on these two guys?
On Will Fuller, we are looking around wide receiver number 30 in both formats. Actually, surprisingly, one spot higher in PPR than standard. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me either. I see you shaking your head. And Kiki Kuti, around wide receiver 50 in both formats. The thing with him is just remember that he is injured and probably not even a go in week 1 here. Will Fuller, like you said, better in standard for me. Also someone I would like in a best ball type league. I think that is most likely where I'm going to have him actually if I end up getting in one of those leagues.
Yeah, as we mentioned, both guys are injury risks. Best ball is great for Will Fuller. Kiki, if he is healthy, could be a PPR stud this year. Hopefully it was just kind of an injury that happened last season, and whatever he's dealing with it still this season, hopefully he gets healthy. Anybody to talk about at tight end, or can we just skip over it and on to the next team?
I think it's pretty safe to just skip over that position.
All right, no
there.
tight end to draft in Houston. Let's go talk about this team that I think has been making a lot of noise recently, the Indianapolis Colts. And now retired quarterback Andrew Luck. Do not draft Andrew Luck. He is retired, at least for this year.
Right. In redraft, you don't want to take him. Dynasty, I think he still has a little bit of appeal. He's only 29 years old. He could easily come back around age 31, 32 maybe, and likely still be a top 15 quarterback anyway for fantasy purposes. Anything else to add for Luck?
No, that's a good point that he could come back. There's an interview with Gronk where he's talking about CBD oil and how he's finally healthy for the first time ever and could physically come back to play, but his just mind isn't into it. So it's Andrew Luck left because the injuries made it so that it wasn't fun. So if he does heal up, he could come back. Definitely still some value in Dynasty, none in redraft. Jacoby Brissett, what's his ADP? I'm assuming it hasn't been caught up to the news.
It has a little bit. He's up to quarterback number 30. I don't really see it going a ton higher than this. I maybe in the high 20s is where his value lies. Someone you're not really going to take in a single quarterback format for sure. Even in super flex 2 quarterback leagues, at best he's your third quarterback for me.
Yeah, as you said, in a super flex league, you'd be a pretty weak team if he's your second quarterback, but he's a fine third quarterback to have to come in for your bye weeks. But with the Andrew Luck retirement news, it affects the value of everybody on this team. So we're going to go through that. First up, Marlon Mack. I think this guy is just going to be complete garbage this year now that Andrew Luck is gone. In 2017, when Andrew Luck wasn't there, he was under 4 yards per carry. Last year with Andrew Luck there, he was well over 4 yards per carry. Surprisingly, both you and Mr. Black still have him ranked fairly high. You have him at 26 in PPR and 19. I have him all the way down at 42. So not somebody that I'm interested in. We'll talk about his ADP in a second, but I'm going to talk about Nyheim Hines quickly here. He's a guy who I think his value gets a little bit of a bump. This team isn't going to be as good. They're going to be chasing points more often than not now. And Nyheim Hines is a pass-catching back, a third-down back, who is going to see more playing time. So slight bump there. And Jordan Wilkins' value is basically 0 at this point. Not someone I'd look to in redraft. But why don't you hit us with the ADPs on these guys?
Yeah. You said that I'm really high on Mac. I'm not. I've got him at running back 24. I don't think that's particularly high. But anyhow, for Marlon Mack, if you are drafting him right now, he is going as your running back number 20 in standard formats and slightly higher in PPR formats. Again, this could definitely shift with the Luck news, but that's where he's at. Nyheim Hines, around running back number 50 in PPR, running back 60 standard. Not really a surprise that he's going that much higher in PPR for reasons you just mentioned. And Jordan Wilkins, not being drafted, essentially. He's over number 100 in both formats here. I agree on Hines with the situation here. They're going to be behind, and they will be forced to throw a lot more than they were planning on with Luck being healthy.
Yeah, this team went from being one of the best in fantasy to probably being one of the worst. They weren't top 5 before. They maybe have been top 10, but now they're probably not bottom 5, but they might be definitely bottom 10. So we're going to move on to the wide receivers, and this was a group that I was really excited about. T.Y. Hilton getting older, and a couple of rookies that I liked there, Deion Kane and Paris Campbell, as well as Devin Funchess, who's a proven decent wide receiver, and with luck at quarterback could have done something. And now when I look at this group, I think T.Y. Hilton is top 30, top 25 at best. Devin Funchess is someone I have no interest in. Deion Kane is playing well, but I just don't see him having any type of value with Jacoby Brissett there. And Paris Campbell is not even a sleeper at this point. They all have dynasty value except for Funchess. But outside of dynasty leagues, I'm not even looking at these guys in redrafts. Matt, your thoughts, and what's the ADP?
T.Y., he fell about 8 spots for me in our weekly rankings here, draft rankings. And the market hasn't shifted on T.Y. a whole lot yet. He still is going around wide receiver number 15 in both formats, but he was going around guys like Amari Cooper and Stephon Diggs. I imagine that those guys are going to go ahead of him in every single draft from here on out. Next guy we were talking about is Funchess, around wide receiver number 60 in both formats. Somebody I have zero interest in redraft, dynasty, best ball, whatever. I don't want Devin Funchess. Wide receiver number 70 for both formats is Paris Campbell. Deion Kane you could have had for free. You still can. Wide receiver 100 is PPR, and he's lower than that in standard formats. Kane's having a great preseason. I think these guys could have a little bit of value. Maybe even just for garbage time this year. And we're talking about how much they're going to be throwing. Maybe someone worth a flyer at the end, maybe Paris Campbell. I don't really see Kane coming through with that this year for you. But, yeah, definitely dynasty value here.
We'll move on to the tight ends here who are also hurt by this. Eric Ebron was easily a top 10 tight end before the news. Now I would assume going outside of the top 10. And Jack Doyle was a nice sleeper coming into here, seeing as Ebron's numbers last year compared to previous years weren't that much different. You know, he just had a lot of touchdowns, and Jack Doyle had a really good season in 2017 before the injury in 2018. Still was on for a lot of pass plays in 2018 as well. So at this point, I don't have Ebron as a starter, and I have no value for Jack Doyle.
Yeah, Ebron is still being drafted as tight end number 8 in both formats. Market may not have shifted yet. He was outside of the top 10 prior to the Luck injury or retirement, and he's gone down a little bit. And, yeah, Jack Doyle I don't really want any part of either. Andrew Luck just crushed this entire offense, which you mentioned earlier. Nothing else really to say on the Indy for me.
Yeah, except for Nyheim Hines, who's like a 4th or 5th running back to get in a PPR league would be some good value there. But that's it for the Colts. Andrew Luck, all the best. And let's move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars and their new quarterback, Nick Foles. What's his ADP?
Nick Foles is currently being drafted as quarterback number 26 and 210th overall. Like we just talked about with Brissett, it's not somebody that I'm looking for in even 2 quarterback formats as a starter. Fine for that third option as a bye week fill-in. He's not going to do what he did in Philly when he was okay for me anyway. I don't like this offense anyway.
Yeah, Nick Foles, I'd probably rank him ahead of Jacoby Brissett, but they're both in the similar conversation there where it's in a 2-quarterback league, you're looking at them being your third quarterback, definitely not your second. So not much else to say about Nick Foles. Let's talk about the running backs here and off-injured Leonard Fournette. What's his ADP? Because I want to know whether or not I'm going to be taking a chance on him.
Leonard Fournette is currently being drafted at running back number 12. So obviously the last RB1, term you really don't like, in 12-team leagues. Pick number 23 and 28 respectively. Those are very specific. Obviously that's going to fluctuate a little bit per draft. He's just kind of going around the guys, Kerryon Johnson, Aaron Jones, Damian Williams. I'm taking the first 2 above him in both formats and Damian ahead of him in PPR. He's a guy that has a lot of talent but can't stay on the field. I don't really trust him as a top running back for me going into this year.
Yeah, looking at my rankings here for him, I'm not that far off the 12 mark. I have him at 15 in standard and 17 in PPR. And when I'm looking here at the rankings at BlueDuckFantasy.com, I see that you once again copied my rankings and changed them just a little bit. Well, at least you did in standard. You have him at 16, and you just copied straight up and have him at 17 in PPR. Like you said, Aaron Jones, Kerryon Johnson, players I'm taking ahead of him. I do not like Damian Williams. I will get to that when we do the West, but I think that's going to be a committee, so I have him above Damian Williams in both formats. But now, since he's going to be injured, or most likely going to be injured, who is the handcuff to own here? Is there a clear handcuff?
It's not a clear one. It could be Raquel Armstead or Alfred Blue. Armstead is the guy that the public has gone to, though, and they are drafting him around running back number 75. He's probably not going to have a ton of value, even if Fournette gets hurt, to be honest with you. This offense isn't going to be very good. Fournette's probably the only guy I'm taking out of it, as a whole, really.
Yeah, Carlos Hyde wasn't able to do much last year there. TJ Yeldon has some success as a pass catcher, basically, out of the backfield. Alfred Blue has been, an okay running back some weeks, but mostly just a backup. He is injured, too, at the moment. So if you are drafting right now and you do draft Leonard Fournette and you draft a deep enough team where you can have a handcuff, I might as well gamble on Raquel Armstead. I don't care for the talent. I think he's got bad vision. But he would be the lead back. There's really nobody else there. I remember looking it up, and I thought, yeah, he's for sure the backup. And I saw Alfred Blue's name and thought, oh, well, maybe he is. But at the moment, Raquel Armstead is the person to talk about. But now somebody I want to talk about is D.D. Westbrook. The reason I want to talk about him is because first I want to know his ADP, and I want to compare it to our rankings of him.
Okay, so for D.D. Westbrook, we are looking at wide receiver 37 for standard and just outside of wide receiver 40 for PPR. Picks 92 and 96, respectively, in those formats there. Going around the likes of Curtis Samuel and Marvin Jones Jr.
I'm sorry, who was the second one?
Marvin Jones Jr.
Another player I don't like. Just looking at our rankings here on BlueDuckFantasy.com. Once again, you copied my rankings and changed them just a little bit. I have him at 56, and you have him at 57, whereas the consensus is around, 35 to 40, you said?
Mm-hmm.
So we are quite low on him, and I was thinking about this today. He's the number one receiver, apparently, in Jacksonville. Nick Foles apparently has chemistry with him. What is stopping him from finishing as being a decent wide receiver? He is in a similar situation, you could say, to Kenny Golladay, except this offense isn't as good as Detroit's is going to be. So let's call him a poor man's Kenny Golladay. Kenny Golladay is 10 to 15, 10 to 20 range? So why couldn't we look at him being in the 20 to 30 range or the 25 to 35 range? Why do we both have him at 55?
This isn't even so much even a knock on Dede. It's just a knock on the whole offense. You've compared him to Kenny Golladay. He's not nearly as talented as that, I don't think.
No, I meant the situation where he's the number one guy, Kenny Golladay the number one guy. They have a decent running back. No other wide receiver is really there. Sure, Marvin Jones in Detroit, but don't like him either.
There's a couple of guys in Jacksonville that could make some noise and just could steal some looks from Foles. Like DJ Shark is an up-and-comer guy that we both kind of like a little bit. Still very low, but Marquise Lee's there, Keelan Cole. When you look at Detroit and you're comparing him to Golladay, there's Marvin Jones, and then we didn't even know who it was. Turned out it was Danny Amendola, but there's nobody else there, and Kenny Galladay's just a lot better of a player. Matthew Stafford's also a lot better than Nick Foles. That's my reasoning behind this ranking here. I just don't like the offense. Even a number one receiver, which might not even be number one receiver. It's just not something I'm willing to take, and hence he's ranked number 57 for me in standard.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of wanted to go over that because we're so far away from what the consensus is on him. And one of the things with Jacksonville is last year he was the number one receiver, but week in and week out, he wasn't the number one receiver every week. It was Moncrief one week. Keelan Cole would have a week. I mean, even TJ Yeldon was beating them in receptions some weeks. So the ball gets passed around. They have a lot of wide receivers. I don't know if you mentioned, but Chris Conley is also there. Yeah, Dede's probably the number one, but he's not the number one like you'd want a number one to be. And as you mentioned, DJ Chark, a guy we both like, and a guy I like, Keelan Cole, could also make some noise there. I'm not interested in any of the Jacksonville receivers this year. if you're drafting D.D. Westbrook at around 35 or 40, you're probably going to be disappointed. I mean, he could finish at about that ADP if he has a good year, but he likely won't finish ahead of that as much. So moving on, tight end, Josh Oliver. I don't have much to say about him other than don't draft him in a redraft league, but absolutely grab him Dynasty because he might be good in a couple years. Matt?
Yeah, can't really say add a whole lot to that, to be honest. Definitely not somebody I'm looking for in redraft here. All I wrote really beside him was, to be honest, is do not draft. That says it all for me on Josh Oliver.
There it is, Josh Oliver, do not draft. Moving on to the Tennessee Titans, Marcus Mariota. I can't even say his last name. Marcus Mariota is not a fantasy starter for me. And what about you? You want him as a fantasy starter?
No, he's kind of like the last two quarterbacks we just talked about in Nick Foles and Jacoby Brissett. Same category, third quarterback on a two-quarterback starting league. And same with Ryan Tannehill if he somehow takes over. Not somebody I want either.
Yeah, no interest in the quarterback situation here, but definitely some interest in the running back situation, at least one of them. What is Derrick Henry's ADP?
Derrick Henry is going around running back number 20 in both formats, actually a slightly higher in PPR, which kind of caught me off guard there. I wasn't expecting that. But, again, it's super close. You're looking at guys like Chris Carson and Mark Ingram are the comparables to him. I'm just going to double-check here, but I'm almost positive that I've got them both ranked ahead of him on BlueDuckFantasy.com.
I definitely have Carson ahead of him, but I definitely have Henry ahead of Ingram. Looking at your rankings here, you have it the same in PPR, so I'm assuming you have it the same in standard as well.
I've got Carson and Ingram ahead
19, 21, and 22 on Ingram.
Yeah, 19, 20, and 22 here. So I like both of those guys better than him. You mentioned that you would take him over Ingram. Deion Lewis, what do you think of Deion Lewis? He's just kind of the pass-catching back, but
I think he's done. It's like
really
a fork in him. He's done. I liked him last year, and he really didn't do much, and this became the Derrick Henry show, and I see that continuing. But just something to mention about Derrick Henry. First 4 weeks, if you don't draft him, their left tackle, or Pro Bowl left tackle, all-star left tackle, Taylor Lewan, is going to be suspended for 4 weeks, which is going to hurt the run game. It's going to hurt the pass game. It's going to hurt everything about the offense. So you could see a situation where Derrick Henry isn't performing well through 4 weeks, and people are already labeling him a bust, and you could trade for him, get him on the cheap, knowing that the left tackle will be coming back and should be getting an upgrade.
Yeah, and just the last thing on Derrick Henry is his whole season was essentially 4 weeks at the end of the year. That's primarily why I'm a little bit lower on him. Moving on here for wide receivers, Corey Davis is somebody I like quite a bit actually this year. And when I say that pretty loosely. I have him higher than his ADP. I have him going in the top 30s. He is being drafted outside of top 30 for wide receivers in both formats here. I like the talent here. If he was probably on another team, he would be around probably wide receiver 20, honestly. It's just there's nobody really to get him the ball, but I have some faith that Corey Davis is the one guy out of this offense I'm going to be drafting a lot of.
Yeah, I like Corey Davis, and especially at his ADP. He's definitely somebody that we've gotten a lot of shares of in the mocks that we did, especially back in June. He seems to be labeled, I guess, kind of an underperformer. This is a third-year wide receiver. This is often the year where they bust out, so I like him. I have him ranked here at around 30. We got the jersey in the back, obviously. Matt, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, how about 29? Yeah, I'm at 27. Definitely some value here. As good as third wide receiver on your team, flex play in PPR leagues. I like him. But let's talk about the other guys there. We have Adam Humphries and A.J. Brown. What are the ADPs on them? Not that I'm overly interested in any of them, simply because I don't think Mariota will throw that much, and most of the throws will go to Corey Davis.
Okay, so the ADP on Adam Humphrey for standard formats is around wide receiver 75. In PPR, he's going around wide receiver 61. And for A.J. Brown in both formats, he's being drafted to be around wide receiver 70 to 75. Not somebody I have a ton of interest. Maybe Humphreys a little bit in PPR. A.J. Brown, of course, in dynasty leagues for me. But again, I just said it. Corey Davis is the guy out of the offense for me.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I don't think there's going to be enough volume to feed more than one wide receiver here. I think we had a draft where we drafted A.J. Brown after taking Corey Davis. It was a deeper league. It was a 16-team league, and we kind of took him as a handcuff in case something happened to Corey Davis, and simply because of the upside. Is it not a rookie that I care about in 2019? It's a bad situation there, and Adam Humphries won't be able to do what he did in Tampa Bay, which even wasn't that good. Delaney Walker is upset, feels disrespected, and is coming to show everybody that he's still a top tight end. Is he a top 10 tight end?
Top 10, absolutely not for me. The public isn't that shy from him, though. They are looking at him as he's going as tight end number 11 and 12 in standard and PPR respectively. So he is still getting drafted as a starter. He is not a starter for me this year. I feel like he's done, and I feel like Jonas Smith, the other tight end there, he's going to just eat into his volume a little bit as well. Personally, I have Delaney Walker as tight end number 21 in standard format. That just kind of shows you what I think of him this year.
I am at 16, so I think he's close to a starter. He could be someone that is a decent bye-week fill-in, but he'll most likely be drafted. Apparently, the trend this year is drafting 2 tight ends, as we saw in our mock and as you saw in your draft the other day. Really having to scrape the bottom of the barrel to get a tight end late in drafts. I'm thinking Jonnu Smith just isn't going to do it. He's had a couple years to do it, and I think Delaney Walker's still under contract. There's a reason they gave him that contract. I wouldn't mind having him in a deeper league as a tight end, but he's not someone I want starting in a 12-team league. But like I said, I have him at 16, and Mr. Black has him all the way up at 8. Loving the old guy. Mm-hmm. But let's move on to the NFC South. And it started off with the Falcons and Matt Ryan, a player who I expect to regress a lot with Freeman back and with the defense healthy, less throwing. What's his ADP right now?
Matt Ryan is currently being drafted as the 5th quarterback coming off the board. A little bit higher than I've got him as well, actually. I've got him as quarterback number 8 here in the 4-point format and as quarterback number 8 in the 6-point format. So a little bit too high for me. He's going as pick 69. We've talked about this enough. Don't take a quarterback early. They're all going to be similar at the end of the day here. That's all I got to say about Matt Ryan here.
Yeah, I think he's fine. I have him ranked 8th. I see again you copied my ranking. So he's definitely somebody that you should draft, but wait. And he won't be there when you wait. So he's not somebody you're going to get to draft, unfortunately. Wait on quarterback. What did I just say, Matt? You want to repeat it for them one more time?
Wait on quarterback.
Thank you. Devonta Freeman coming back from injury. I have him as a top 15 back. I think he's a safe back. I'm not worried about the injury concerns. I think he's going to be fine this year. What's his ADP?
Devonta Freeman is currently being drafted as around running back 15, actually, in both formats here. So he is, obviously going to be a starter, but he is going out just outside of the top running backs here. That's pretty much right where I've got him. I'm not concerned about the injury there either. Ito Smith, the other running back there, he showed last year he could do a little bit of damage there when Freeman was out, so that might eat away at Devonta's load a little bit, but I still like Devonta Freeman quite a bit going into this season here. I'm more than comfortable having him as my second back on my team.
Ito Smith, definitely a decent player. Would you say the ADP was on Ito Smith?
Ito Smith is going around running back 55 in both formats.
Okay, so that's pretty good. I like him at that ADP. Like I said, I have Freeman ranked in the top 15. He's kind of boring. He's not going to over-exceed, and he's not going to under-exceed. He's going to be around 15. He's not going to jump that much higher. It's not going to win you your league, and he's not going to lose your league. So he's a safe running back to get if you happen to get him at that spot. Some of the guys going around him, I'm guessing, are like Aaron Jones, Kerryon Johnson, and Fournette. There's a lot of risk with those guys. So if you want the safer play, you can go with Devonta Freeman. I'm just going to check Ito real quick on BlueDuckFantasy.com. Yeah, I have him at 45. Yeah, I'm at 41. This is just standard scoring. So with him going at 55, he's somebody I want to get a lot of shares of because he's going to get about a third of the workload. That's kind of how they run this offense. And that's kind of what I want to talk about these other guys too, Brian Hill and Kadri Olesen. In dynasty formats, these are guys that are eventually going to kind of go into this role. Tevin Coleman had the Ito Smith role. Now he's gone, and he did really well in fantasy there while Devonta Freeman was healthy. So Ito Smith, undervalued. Grab him. Somebody who was overvalued, though, at least in my eyes, Julio Jones. What is the ADP on Julio Jones? And I'll tell you why it's wrong.
That is definitely your opinion only. Julio is being drafted as the third wide receiver coming off the board. Around pick 13, 11, or standard in PPR there. Overalls, of course, so that puts him at the end of first round, bottom or beginning of round 2, depending on how many teams, of course. But I will give you the floor with Julio because I'm with the consensus here. I believe Julio is still great and is going to do it again.
Yeah, one of the few times you didn't copy my rankings. So listen, Julio, you're getting a bit older. Last year, you were great. You were fantastic. But your team was missing your lead running back, so you had to pass a bunch more. And your defense was terrible because Keanu Neal and Deion Jones missed pretty much the whole season. So you had to throw and throw and throw. And guess what? Calvin Ridley emerged a little bit, and he's going to cut into your targets this year. Less throwing, more Ridley targets. Doesn't mean you're bad. You're just not top 5 anymore, buddy. I got you at number 10, and you'll finish around there. You will not be top 5. And Matt's shaking his head in agreement. Perfect. We'll move on to Calvin Ridley now. What's the ADP on him?
Calvin Ridley is going around wide receiver 25 in both formats, along the lines with DJ Moore and Mike Williams are the most comparable guys that I've got here to him. Calvin Ridley is somebody that, like you said, came on a little bit last year. It's kind of funny here. I'm just looking at our rankings here. You
kind of
are
funny.
going to laugh. We've got him, every single one of us, including Mr. Black. We've got him at wide receiver number 24 in standard here. So he made a little bit of an impression on all 4 of us. And wouldn't you know it, wide receiver 24 is his ADP.
Like I have you guys here to give rankings, so we have more of a different opinion. And you're both copying my rankings on this Calvin Ridley one. We all have him at 24. His ADP is 24. What do you want to say? It's not undervalued. It's not overvalued. He's fairly valued. I think he's going to probably decrease touchdowns and increase yards and catches and cut into Julio Jones, bringing him back down to earth. Any other receivers worthy of talking about here?
I'll just throw out Mohamed Sanu's ADP because he is being drafted, it looks like. He's going around wide receiver 65 in both standard and PPR formats. He's going as like a 5th wide receiver on most teams here. Not really somebody I want this year at all. I don't believe you do either. No,
when you take an injury to either Julio Jones or Calvin Ridley for him to have any type of like start or flex value in any league. So I think they really want to develop Calvin Ridley. Mohamed Sanu was a good stopgap type of player for them. But now it's time to forget about him in fantasy. But here's somebody you don't want to forget about in fantasy, especially not in PPR, and that's tight end Austin Hooper. Surprisingly, had 70-plus catches last year and was actually 4th in receptions for tight ends. 4th. Austin Hooper, 4th in receptions. So in PPR leagues, Austin Hooper definitely has some value, even possibly a starter value, somewhere around there. He'll probably regress in catches this year without having Devonta Freeman, who catches a lot of short balls. They probably had to lean on tight end a bit more, but he should still be more of a high-volume tight end play. Matt, what's the ADP on Austin Hooper?
Austin Hooper is being drafted right around that tight end number 12 mark in both formats, 12 in standard, 11 in PPR. It's somebody I'm okay with as a starter in both formats here. Like Ben mentioned, he had 71 catches last year. I even put in my comments here on BlueDuckFantasy.com. Don't expect that to repeat, and a couple of nice games really affected those numbers. I've actually got him as tight end number 11 in both formats for me as a ranking. So I do see him as a starter. He's just not going to blow you away, but he's one of those guys that just won't hurt you, won't kill you.
Yeah, and the thing about him, though, that's frustrating is he'll have a great game, and then you'll be like 2 for 14, and the next game he'll be 70 for 80 in a score, and then 3 for 27. So the inconsistency is tough to take. When he hits, he hits pretty hard. That's going to do it for the Falcons. And let's move on to the Carolina Panthers. And Cam Newton, is he healthy?
Out of Carolina, they are saying he is ready to go week 1, so we are going to have to take that as face value that he is healthy enough. He did get hurt in that preseason week 3 against the Pats, but they are saying he is going to be ready to go. The public believes he's going to be ready to go as well. They're taking him as the 10th quarterback off the board. I've actually got him as number 6, so I've got him quite higher, actually. Pick number 87, he's even at quarterback number 10. That is still a little bit too high for me on quarterbacks, to be honest.
Yeah, 87. I'm trying to think what round that is. 7, 8?
Yeah,
give or take, or 9. That's kind of at the point where I might consider it. But with the injury last year and possibly the injury this year, I'm still going to wait. And if he falls another round or so, then maybe I look at him. But I'm going to say something that I don't think anybody's ever heard before. Wait on quarterback in 2019 for your fantasy draft. You can't stress that enough. Let them come to you. Don't go reaching for Cam Newton in the 7th round when he's going to average 1 to 2 points more, if that, than a guy that you're going to get in the 10th or 11th round. Get some better players. Like Christian McCaffrey, my number 2 overall player. He was number 1 for a quick second there, by the way. But back to number 2. I'm not worried about him getting less touches because it's something I mentioned when we talked about Pittsburgh. The Panthers aren't a guaranteed playoff team. They missed the playoffs last year. In order to make the playoffs, they're in a tough division, first of all. They're going to have to win enough games to get to the playoffs, and they're going to have to play their studs. They're not going to be able to say, oh, let's limit McCaffrey's workload so that he's healthy for the playoffs, because they're going to be fighting for a playoff spot come the end of the season. Matt, what's the ADP on Christian McCaffrey?
Right where you'd expect, top 3 in both formats. There's not a whole lot I'm going to add to what you've said about McCaffrey. We don't really need to talk about him. Everybody knows what he is. He's great, dual threat. Running back number 2 for me in both formats and number 2 overall.
Sounds good. Why don't we get the ADPs on DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel then?
Alrighty, DJ Moore around wide receiver 25 in both formats there, picks 59 and 61 respectively, PPR and standard. Curtis Samuel, obviously lower, wide receiver around 40 in both standard and PPR there. 2 players that they're both interesting to me, actually. I don't mind either of those guys at those ADPs, to be honest. I'll probably even take a flyer at DJ Moore. I believe I've got him right in that mark there. I don't remember off the top of my head where I've got Curtis Samuel, but second-year player for DJ Moore, top wide receiver. And if Cam is not healthy, okay, we're going to avoid him. But if Cam's healthy, he's good to go for me.
Yeah, and all indication is that Cam is healthy enough, and I've been hearing about him throwing it deep, so the shoulder should be fine as well. DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel, as you said, both interesting in the sense that both could finish quite high or quite low. They just haven't done it for that long, so you don't know what they're going to do. I actually wouldn't even be surprised if Curtis Samuel finished with more yards or fantasy points than DJ Moore. DJ Moore going much higher. Curtis Samuel, to me, the much better value. You're getting him with a later pick, and he could end up leading this team. They haven't really had a number 1 receiver since, Steve Smith left?
Yeah, that's probably
I guess Calvin Benjamin was decent for a couple weeks.
Funches had a good year.
Funches has a decent year. But those are all bigger guys. DJ Moore, more similar in size to Steve Smith. Curtis Samuel as well. So, interesting, but a lot of up and down risk. Tight ends, Greg Olsen, Ian Thomas. My takes here is pretty simple. They're going to cut into each other enough that neither is going to be viable. So unless you're playing in a league where you pick tight ends by team, don't be drafting these guys. I don't think those leagues exist. I know I've heard about for quarterbacks, but not for tight end. Matt, what's the ADP on these guys, and can we just avoid them?
Greg Olsen is going at around tight end number 20 or 15, pardon me, in both formats. It is way too high for me. I'm not getting any shares of him there. Ian Thomas is even below that. Unfortunately, I don't have his exact figures, but he was low enough that he's not being considered as a draft in redrafts here. Maybe dynasty once Olsen's gone.
Yeah, he definitely has some value there because the tight end position with Greg Olsen and Cam Newton has been a good one. So dynasty, Ian Thomas, redraft, pass on both. Let's move on to the New Orleans Saints and Drew Brees, my pick for NFL MVP this year. What's his ADP? I'm assuming he's going too high because we like to wait on quarterbacks, but let's hear it.
He is going as quarterback, the 7th quarterback off the board here, QB7, and at pick number 82. So again, it's going to be 7, maybe round 8 there. The one thing I'll mention here just quickly, when we're saying wait on quarterbacks, we're talking about the standard 1 quarterback league. 2 QB, super flex, a little bit different situation. You've got to play those by the draft. Sometimes quarterbacks just fly off the board there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at that ADP, I would perhaps take a shot on Drew Brees just because if I check my rankings here on BlueDuckFantasy.com, I have him ranked as my number 3 quarterback. And the number 3 quarterbacks are going at around, round 3, 4, 5?
4 or 5, yeah.
Right. So if I'm getting him in round 7, 8, or 9, actually I probably wouldn't do it in 7, 8 maybe, 9 for sure I would take him. So that very high on Drew Brees this year. Without Ingram, I think you saw what happened last year when they didn't have Ingram. He passed a ton. I wanted to ask you a quick question about Teddy Bridgewater. So nobody's drafting Teddy Bridgewater in single quarterback leagues or any type of league that isn't ridiculously deep. But let's say that my MVP pick, Drew Brees, goes down in week 1, out for the season. Where would you rank Teddy Bridgewater rest of the season?
It's a good question, really. You don't really think about handcuffs too much with quarterbacks, honestly. Bridge, he's obviously not going to be nearly as high as Breeze in the top 10 range. Bridgewater, I'd probably put around quarterback 20-ish. I'd have to really sit there and think about it a little bit more, but I do like the offense regardless of who's there. Obviously, Breeze makes everyone better, but Bridgewater, I'd probably put it around quarterback 20. Not a starter in single QB leagues, but definitely a starter in 2 QB leagues for me. How about yourself?
I think I'd have him around 15. I have Jared Goff at 15 right now. I'd definitely take him above him, but I take him over Jimmy G. I take him over. I don't like Russell Wilson at all this year. I think it'd be close between the two of them. I can't figure out who I have at 16. I'm assuming it's gonna be Brady. It is Brady. He'd be in that mix, maybe a little bit later than 15. 15 at the high end. Just an interesting question. You shouldn't be handcuffing quarterbacks, but when you get an offense like this, there's a lot of value in the next quarterback. It's not the same situation as the Colts, where the Colts were good because of luck. They didn't really have the best offense. But anyways, that's enough about that. Let's talk about Alvin Kamara. I'm assuming he's going as top 3 pick in every draft.
That is a very good guess. Yes, he is. He's going as top 3 in both standard and PPR formats. There's not a lot to say here.
Nope, that seems about right. So let's talk about Latavius Murray.
Latavius Murray is somebody that is an interesting player for me this year. You're going to hate this. I see him kind of filling that gap role of Mark Ingram that Mark Ingram voided here. Maybe steal the goal line touches from Alvin Kamara here, and he will be someone that's taking in round running back 35 in both formats here. That's right around where I have him, as if I'm not mistaken.
You actually have him at 35. Only 2 off my ranking of 33. I think Mark Ingram is his ceiling.
Yeah.
So if you're expecting him to be Mark Ingram, you're wrong. Well, you might end up being right, but it's unlikely.
It's at best.
Yeah. But still, going at around top 35, the ADP was again?
Yeah, he's right around 35.
Yeah, so he's going about where he should be going. He's not going to be bad. He's definitely not going to be bad, but he's also not going to be great. He's going to give you kind of similar to what Mark Ingram did, except less. So, safe pick. Michael Thomas, who I think could be the number 1 quarterback this year, since I love Breeze so much, but I also think he's a sell in Dynasty because I don't see Breeze playing after this season. What's the ADP on Michael Thomas? I'm assuming it's in the top 10.
Yeah, he is wide receiver 4 in both formats here. I don't think there's that cliff coming with Michael Thomas, even with Bridgewater. I think Thomas is good enough to overcome that. But we're in redraft for sure. He's top 5 wide receivers. Top 6, I'll say, because I've got him as ranked at number 6. Not someone we have to say a whole lot about. He's going to get it done. PPR is going to be a little bit better than he is in standard for sure. You got anything else to add with Michael Thomas?
No, safe. About as safe as a wide receiver. I think I have him probably ranked 3rd after Adams and Hopkins. He's a first-round pick. He should be a first-round pick. I'll mention, if you're getting these wide receivers at the end of the first round, I would prefer you take them over Le'Veon Bells of the world and the Mixons and stuff like that. Get yourself a safe wide receiver. What about Traquan Smith and Ted Ginn? What are the ADPs here?
Okay, so Traquan Smith here, he is being drafted around wide receiver number 60 in both formats here. Ted Ginn, I'm going to just double check the ADP on him just because I think I have PPR and Standard flopped, but he is wide receiver 70, and I've got that written down as PPR, and wide receiver 99 as standard. I'm thinking that's probably reversed.
Well, it could be. Also, the ADPs tend to be a little out of whack. So Ted Ginn's basically free at the end of your draft. His upside is to be the number 2 wide receiver, or at least like a 2A, 2B situation with Traquan Smith. Obviously, the upside there is Traquan Smith if he takes over that role and becomes, a great target. I have Traquan ranked as my wide receiver number 42. You have him at 50, and Mr. Black has him at 59. This is in standard scoring. And sorry, the ADP again was?
On Traquan, it is
60?
around 60 for both formats.
So definitely some good value there. In my eyes, I have him at 42. You have him at 50. So Traquan Smith is definitely somebody you should be looking at as like your 5th receiver, like a bench receiver. And he also has huge handcuff value, which is something we don't talk about for wide receivers. But if Michael Thomas goes down, they're going to be feeding Traquan the ball. So moving on to the final asset on this team, newly acquired from the Raiders, or at least signed from free agency, is Jared Cook. And I will once again refuse to believe in him this year. Is he top 10? Sure. He had a great year last year in Oakland. I will bet that he's going to have a great first week since he tends to do that. And I will probably be starting him at tight end in all DFS formats in week 1.
That's actually a really good pick and a good point. He was on fire week 1 last year. And Jared Cook was somebody that, like you mentioned with one of the tight ends we were talking about earlier. I can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, that's who it was. He has a good week, and then he'll have a couple of bad weeks, and then a good one, etc. Right now he's being drafted as number 7 tight end in both formats. So obviously people believe him as a starter. It's a little bit higher than I've got him, but not by a ton. Pick number 70-ish, between 70 and 75 for both formats. I'm not taking him that high. That's even though he's fine for tight end number 7, I'm not taking tight end number 7 that high.
Okay. Don't know what else there's to say about Jared Cook other than pick him week 1 in daily fantasy formats. Jameis Winston and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, new coach, Bruce Arians. This offense is going to be amazing, right? I mean, last year, Jameis Winston and Ryan Fitzpatrick combined were the number 2 fantasy scoring quarterback if they were one person, but they're not. Jameis Winston, what's the ADP? He's a player that I like. He's one of our sleepers. He's definitely a boomer bust candidate this year.
Yeah, if you had to guess, where do you think Jameis is sitting?
15th. Quarterback 15th.
Okay, I was hoping you'd take quarterback 10 because yourself, Mr. Black, and myself all have him as number 10, but he is actually not even ADP number 10. He's actually ADP 16. So your first guess was pretty close. It would just been funny if you would have gone that way.
Yeah, I was picking on what the ADP was because I knew he was top 10 in our rankings doing the post the other day when we had it. I saw that he was 10. I was a little bit surprised that we had him 10th. Or I guess he was 9th looking here. Kirk Cousins with 10. I'm bringing Kirk Cousins' value up. But yeah, we all had him ranked as 10, which is fairly odd because it's nowhere near the consensus. And he's going at what, pick 100, 112, 120?
103.
103. So he's going almost in the 10th round. So if you're waiting on quarterback, here's a guy who's not going to cost you a lot, and he might just explode and have a great season. And if he busts, you can just grab somebody else with a later pick, or you can pick somebody off the waiver wire.
But Jameis is a guy that is a perfect example why we're saying wait on quarterback. You can get Jameis in double-digit rounds here, and he will be very close to as good as the guys that are going ahead of him. Obviously, exceptions, Mahomes, etc., but he's not going to hurt you.
Okay, moving on to the running backs here. We got 2 of them. They're about the same, Ronald Jones and Peyton Barber. I'm assuming their ADPs are very close. I was actually thinking that this team should go after Melvin Gordon today. And then I checked their cap, and they have the least amount of cap space in the entire league. How
Really?
The Buccaneers. Like, who do they have signed? And apparently JPP makes like $15 million a year. But, yeah, so they won't be able to do that. So why don't we just get the ADPs on Ronald Jones and Peyton Barber?
Yeah, maybe Sue contract asserting them. I don't know. But anyway, Ronald Jones and Peyton Barber, both of them are going between running back 40 and 45 in both formats. So like you've guessed, they're very close. Nobody really knows what's going to happen here. It sounds like Barber's kind of got the lead at the end of camp here, but that could change at any moment here. Running backs in the 40s there. Who are we going around here?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the rankings here on Blue Duck Fantasy, and once again, you didn't actually copy me with the rankings this time, but I have one at 42 and the other 43 in one format, and 45 and 46 in the other. And both you and Mr. Black have them both one off as well in both formats. And so we have them back-to-back in the rankings, 41-42 in PPR and 39 and 40 in Standard. Heard today that they might just play the hot hand, whoever the better running back is they're going to go with. So you're looking at a lot of inconsistencies here. I don't think either running back is very good. And that's, to me, the biggest takeaway. Neither of them is going to run away with the starting job. They're going to have their weeks where they're decent. But all in all, they're not going to be that great. What was the ADP? So was it around 40?
Between 40 and 45 for both of them in both formats.
So they're going in the right spots. It's just going to be a very frustrating situation to know who to pick and start that week, because one guy could start and have a couple bad series, and then the other guy will finish the game and have the lion's share of the touches. So situation that you can avoid or not avoid, up to you, but it's going to be frustrating. Someone who's not going to be frustrating, Mike Evans. He's a stud. I'm assuming he's also going in the first round, or at least the early second. What is his ADP?
He's being drafted as the 8th wide receiver off the board in both formats. He's a little bit later in round 2. He's going pick 2021, and that's a good spot for him. Obviously, that's actually the league you had mentioned earlier that I drafted. I picked him at the end of round 2. I'm very comfortable with him as my top wide receiver in both formats this year.
Yeah, I have him ranked 4th in Standard. I could see him easily leading the league in yards. Touchdowns are a little bit fluky, but I could definitely see him having at least 8. In PPR, he should be lower. But if you're saying you're getting him late in the second, you could be looking at starting your draft, Christian McCaffrey, Mike Evans, and then in the third round, getting yourself, I don't know, there's got to be Diggs maybe there, Galladay. There may also be a tight end still available too if you want to go that route. So that's a really good start to a draft. If you can get Mike Evans late in the second, that's fantastic value to me. What about Chris Godwin? Interesting player.
Yeah,
should get a boost, but what's the ADP?
Yeah, he's in the top 20 for wide receivers. Little bit high for me. He's getting a ton of hype. I don't know if everyone just thinks Mike Evans is going to become wide receiver 2 there, and Godwin's going to be the number 1 guy. I really don't see that happening. I don't really get where all the hype is coming from. I have him in the top 25, but even this is a little bit high for me. He's being drafted around guys like Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett, A.J. Green. It's not necessarily ahead. Cooper Kupp, I think, is the closest there, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the hype is all Bruce Arians. They think the offense is going to be a lot better. Adam Humphries is gone, so he should get more targets. He's the clear number 2. There's no competition. But even still, if you're believing he's going to be that good, and you believe Mike Evans is going to be that good, how do you have Jameis Winston ranked as the 16th off the board? You have to be high on all 3. Because you're going to be high on O.J. Howard, who we're going to talk about in a second. I have him ranked around 30th, so if he's going at 20th, I want no piece of him. I'll take a Jarvis Landry or Cooper Kupp ahead of him. But let's talk about O.J. Howard, who's in that second tier of tight ends. Not in the top 3, but he's in the 4, 5, 6. I believe I have him in the 5 spot. I'm assuming you have him either in the 5 or the 6 spot, because I know you love Hunter Henry. But what is his ADP? And
he's being drafted as the next tight end off the board. When I say that, I mean after the big 3, he is being drafted as number 4 in both formats, and actually around pick number 57 in both formats as well. Actually, I shouldn't have said around. I mean that is where he is going. That means he's going around round 5. Not something I'm taking there. Again, the tight end 4 is okay. I've got him as number 5 here, but. Which is not something I'm not looking to bring up that value on tight end there.
I don't hate it because you're going to be, this is a 5th round pick, I guess you're looking at here, 6th round in a 10 team. So if you're playing 2 wide receiver, 2 running back, and you see him who's going to finish out your lineup, and there's no flex player you like as much there. Maybe you're playing in a PPR and there's only some running backs and no good wide receivers. But again, if you can hold off one more round and get him as your 6th round pick, so you have your full starting lineup minus quarterback, and then you pick a tight end, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. He should be top 5 or somewhere around the top 5. It's not going to be that far off. None of these guys are coming into the top 3. So, yeah, good player. 6th round or later would be my thing. Anything else to say about O.J. Howard?
Yeah, no, just that he's in that second group with Hunter Henry and Evan Ingram. That's what we keep mentioning, second group. I figure we might as well tell people who that is.
Gotcha. Cameron Brate, not somebody you should be drafting. He'll probably have a game or two where he has 2 touchdowns, and you're like, man, why don't I have Cameron Brate in your lineup? And then he won't do anything for 3 weeks, and you'll be like, that's why. So don't draft Cameron Brate. And that's going to bring us to the end of the show.
Thanks for watching and or listening.
That's it.